So without further ado, one of my favorite documentarians and filmmakers, Mr. Morgan Spurlock.
Thank you.
So I figured we'd start with your favorite curse word. Morgan, tell us about your creative process and the things that inspire you.
My creative process is there's a lot of whining and crying, a lot of personal abuse. We get ideas within our company from all kinds of places, but probably the thing that is the most inspirational to me, I have a 5-year-old son who is the most fantastic thing on earth, and spending time with him and just talking to him and the things that he says. Like the other day we were going to school and it was cold outside and he had his gloves on and he said, "Daddy, I wish I could put my ears in my pocket." And just like that, he says these fantastic things that I'm like, you are amazing. And so there's so many things that just comes out of his mouth that just really inspire me to look at the world differently and think differently. And so he's probably it for me.
Does that mean the next film is Shit My Son Says?
Exactly. My son has such an influence on me. I'm anxious to see how this continues to go forward with my films.
Well, it's great that you draw inspiration from your family, but how about from your contemporaries?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many filmmakers that I'm inspired by, so many other documentary filmmakers. We were just talking a minute ago about Doug Prey, the guy who directed Art and Copy, who I'm a huge fan of. He's such a great doc filmmaker. I think he's like the modern day, he's like the documentary answer to Ang Lee. Like Ang Lee can direct anything fiction-wise, and Doug Prey, who, if you look at his body of work, he did Scratch, he did Big Rig, he did Art and Copy, he did Surfwise. Like he is such a kind of an eclectic director. And it's people like him, it's people like Alex Gibney, Barbara Koppel, Steve James. I'm inspired by so many of those people. And
well, let's talk about what's next, and then we'll take a look back. But let's talk about your new project.
Sure. I got a film that I'm actually flying to Los Angeles for. Hence why I came in like a hobo with my bags. We have a new movie that's premiering on Wednesday, and it opens next Friday. A film that we did with Will Arnett and Jason Bateman that is all about, there's Will's mom's here. It's a film all about manscaping, the magical world of male grooming, and it's called Mansome. If you are both manly and handsome, then you are Mansome. And it's an amazing cast of people that we have in this film. It's a documentary. It's nonfiction. We have interviews with folks like Zach Galifianakis and Judd Apatow, Paul Rudd, ZZ Top, John Waters, Scott Ian from Anthrax and his magical, nice long man beard. So it's a fun movie, really funny.
And is this the film that you're doing through iTunes and?
No, the film that we released that's currently on it. We released a film about 4 weeks ago called Comic-Con Episode 4: A Fan's Hope that we crushed the window on. Like I wanted this film to be able to be seen by comic book fans and comic book geeks literally as close to day and date as possible. And so the film opened in LA on Thursday, and on Friday, as the film expanded into San Francisco, Seattle, New York, Boston, DC. It was also available on iTunes, Amazon Instant, just about every digital platform you can think of. Like it was on demand on your television, which is still playing on demand. So any comic book fans that are here, there's nothing better than going to see the Avengers and then a little Comic-Con Episode 4. Right. Yeah, which Joss Whedon also produced with us.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, Supersize Me. What there are method actors, and you're kind of a method actor filmmaker. I mean, you really
or just a glutton for punishment,
or that.
Yeah.
But you really did, expose yourself to some pretty severe circumstances. So, what made you wake up that morning and decide to do something like that?
Well, we had a TV series on MTV called I Bet You Will.
I remember that.
It was this show that we started online, and we ended up selling from the internet to television. We sold it to CBS first, and then MTV. And it was this show where we would go out and bet people to do these silly things for money. And it was like right in the middle of the tech boom, when all of these companies were trying to create online programming that they could then springboard off to film and television. Den, Pop, Pseudo, UBO, these companies that spent hundreds of millions of dollars couldn't get a show on television, and for $250,000 we started this company, and we did it before any of them, and we did this silly little show where we would go out on the street and bet people just to do random acts of stupidity, just for cash. And when they canceled that show, we had about $50,000 in the bank. And at that point, we owned all the cameras that we used to make that show. We owned all the editing software and all the computers. And I said, you know what? Why don't we take this 50 grand and make a movie? We got this money. Let's make a film. And so we started talking about what that film would be. And then when I was home over Thanksgiving of that year, I saw the news story about the 2 girls that were suing McDonald's. They basically said, we're fat, we're sick, we're obese, and it's your fault. And I was like, well, that's kind of crazy, that they're going to, sue McDonald's and blame them, saying that, we've eaten this, but it's your fault that we ate it. And then a spokesperson from McDonald's came on and said, listen, you can't link our food to these girls being sick. You can't link our food to these girls being obese. Our food is healthy. It's nutritious. It's good for you. And I was like, well, I don't know if you can really say that either. and I said, because, if it's that good for me, then shouldn't I be able to eat it for like 30 days straight with no side effects? And I was like, oh. And like the light went on, and I was like, I just got a great idea for a movie. And I ran through the house, and I called Scott Ambrosi, the cameraman, the DP, who basically moved in and lived with me while I made this film for the next month. And I called him and told him the idea. And when he finished laughing at me, he said, wow, that's a really great bad idea. And I said, yeah, let's make this movie. And that was the jumping off point from there.
It seems like you're in great shape now, but you did gain quite a bit of weight making the film. How long did it take you and what was that process?
No, it was like it took me a long time. Like by the time the film was done, I'd gained almost 30 pounds. I was 25 pounds in a month. My cholesterol was off the charts. My blood pressure had skyrocketed. My liver was so filled with fat that I was en route to giving myself what doctors called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is basically cirrhosis of the liver through a fatty diet. And and then I went on a detox diet, and for 8 weeks, like all my blood pressure, everything came back to normal, my liver function, everything. And then it took me so that was 2 months, and it took me another 12 months to lose the rest of the weight and keep it off. So it took 14 months to lose all the weight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you make, and tell me if I'm chronologically out of order here, but greatest movie ever
30 days. We made the TV series right after that. Like 30 Days was the thing we made. When we were finishing Super Size Me, and we sold this show even before the film was done. Oh, wow. Or before the film was out in theaters. The film was finished. But we were finishing Super Size Me, and we just submitted it to the Sundance Film Festival. Mm-hmm. And I'd never made a feature film before. I'd never made a full-length movie before. But I knew, having lived in New York City and seen all the people with clipboards outside of movie theaters who ask you, would you like to come to a test screening of a new Universal picture? That we should test the movie. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what we should do, we submitted this to Sundance. Let's test the film. Let's see what audiences really think. And so we went and we stood outside of Angelica at Houston and Broadway with our clipboards, because clipboards make you look 34% more official. And we stood out in front of the building, me and like 2 other people from the office, and we said, excuse me, would you like to come to the test screening of a new independent documentary film? And we got about 50 people to come to the Goldcrest screening room. We showed them the film. And when we finished, myself and the 2 editors, Julie Bob Lombardi and Stella Georgieva, came down front. And we just stood there asking questions, getting feedback from the audience. And one woman on this side of the room, she goes, I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for showing everybody how terrible these corporations are and how we need to just destroy them all and rid the world of these people. And somebody on the other side of the room is like, what movie did you watch? It's like, you are an idiot. That is not what this film says at all. Like, so they start yelling at one another, screaming across the room. And I leaned over to Stella, one of the editors, and I was like, this is awesome. Because literally in that one moment, this movie created such this raw, visceral reaction in the audience. And so the next day, we were back in the edit, and I said, God, how great would it be if we could do something like this where, like every week we could tackle a topic that was, as big as like the obesity epidemic in America. And out of that, conversation came the idea for doing 30 Days, the TV series that we did for FX. And so we went to Sundance, we premiered Super Size Me, we sold Super Size Me at Sundance, and then the next week I flew to Los Angeles, and we sold 30 Days the next week to FX, literally right out of the Sundance Film Festival. So we already knew that was kind of going to be the next thing.
And that's atypical.
It's very atypical, no, and I think that the great press coming out of Sundance really helped. I partnered on that TV show with a guy named Ben Silverman, who at that time was the head of Reveille. He went on to become the president of NBC Universal. Mm-hmm. Now has a company called Electus, based here in New York City. And so I think that we had just a good group of people around that show.
Right. So the greatest movie ever sold, it touches the lives of a lot of people in this room and a lot of the attendees that'll be here all throughout the week. So maybe take us through the process for making that
I'd always
movie.
I'd always wanted to do a film about the world of advertising. You know, like I loved art and copy, and I said, how could we do a story? You know, getting into the kind of the world of advertising, like I would tell this story. Like how would we get into this? And we could never really think of the right thing. And then one day I was watching Heroes. And like, who in here was like a fan of Heroes? Who in here was a fan? Who's a fan of like season 1 of Heroes? Because season 2 just shit the bed like so bad. But season 1 was amazing. But in the very first episode of season 2, the Hayden Panettiere, the cheerleader, she's at a brand new school. Like they moved away from their town, so she's all unhappy. She's she doesn't have any friends, and she hates it. And it's like the worst day ever. And like her birthday's coming up, and I can't believe it. And like she's leaving school and unhappy. And so like her dad puts his arm around her, and he's like, "Oh, honey, your mom and we're really proud of you. You know what? We were gonna save this for your birthday, but." Here you go. And he reaches in his pocket, and as he does, he pulls out a set of keys, and then the camera cuts to the front of the car, and it dollies past the Nissan logo. Right. And then it cuts back to him holding the keys in front of her face, and it racks from like the Nissan logo to her face, and she goes, "Oh, the Rogue? The Nissan Rogue? Oh my God, Dad, the Rogue! I can't believe it's the Rogue!" And I was like, wow, that just really happened. There was a commercial like right there in the middle of this show that I love. And then like later on in the show, she's leaving the party, and now she's got friends. Because apparently if you get a Nissan Rogue, you get friends, yeah. Or at least you have a lot more room for them in your minivan. And
it's an option.
It's an option. Yeah. It's an option for more friends. And no teenage girl would ever be that excited about a minivan. And so she's leaving this party, and she says to her friend, she's like, "Come on, guys, let's get out of here. To the Rogue!" And I was like, "Come on!" And I like chucked the remote across the room. I was so fucking mad. And the next day I got to work, and my producing partner, Jeremy, was just as angry as I was. And we were like, "Did you see that show?" And I couldn't believe it. Did you get that? And we were just like, for like 15 minutes talking about the show. And I was like, man, you know what we should do? We should make a movie that like looks at the whole world of like product placement and advertising. We should just get the whole thing paid for by product placement. Oh, that's a great, like literally from right there, we just started writing down like crazy, ridiculous ideas, and we could and we could put commercials in the movie. That's a terrible idea, you know. And so we just started writing down all the things that we could do in this movie, and it literally came out of an episode of Heroes. That's a true story. It came out of NBC's hatred of their audience. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to point out because after you watch it, you wonder, you see your process going through it.
Yeah.
But afterwards, when you're like, okay, this is going to be a film and it's going to be about this and we need your release, was that difficult to get folks to? Not everybody comes off looking
Rule number
like,
1 in documentaries, you always get the release signed first. But there's times where people won't sign them. Like, we interviewed Donald Trump. Did Donald Trump ever sign his release? I'd like to think he did. I believe he did finally, but after we showed him the clip that was in the film and it got good reviews. But it's one of those things where there is a level of transparency that you have the minute someone agrees to an interview and you come in, and it's not like none of this is hidden cameras. Like we're coming in with a Sony F900 HD cam. It's like I'm not hiding this in my pocket. There's a giant camera, and sometimes there's lights, and it's like, oh, and by the way, we're making a movie. If you didn't know, it's so there is an element of obvious consent that comes out of making a film that they can come back and be like, I didn't sign a release form, and it's like, yeah, there was a camera in the room. Yeah, exactly. If you didn't notice. Yeah.
Well, now that you've signed on, can we have the hookers come out now and the cocaine?
And the cocaine.
Yes,
yeah. Make sure and the 8 balls.
Here they come. So listen, I want to have a lot of time for a lot of folks to ask a lot of questions, and I'm depending on you to help me out with this. So
I like it that we're like in the middle of a moat. It's like I just realized that when I was up here.
Yeah, it's like 10 feet down over there.
I know. So you dive into there. It's like suddenly you're seeing O in Las Vegas.
So who wants to go first? Who's the good student? Do not be
that
shy.
That body that fell over there. Anyone? Yes, there's a gentleman right there. I'm more of a frenemy, as you would see on, Gossip Girl. No, I think that people didn't know what to expect out of Greatest Movie Ever Sold. I think that people were very afraid of that film. Just to give you a sense of how long it took, from the minute we got that idea, coming into the office and having that conversation of we're going to make this film. we're going to make this movie. So we got this idea. So we started calling every advertising agency we could first. That's who we called. It's like, if you're going to get brands on board, you can call advertising agencies. And not one big advertising agency would help us. Big surprise. Right. No advertising agency in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Colorado, Seattle. Richard Kirschenbaum and John Bond, Kirschenbaum and Bond, were the only agency that would even entertain the idea. And they said, well, let us think about who we would go out to. So we're like, okay, fine. Let's call the product placement companies. That's what we should do. So that took a month for us to kind of make the rounds of all the ad agencies. So now we're in February. So now February, we're like, okay, let's call the product placement company. So we start chasing every product placement company we can on both coasts. And I go to meet Norm Marshall, who Norm is a legend in the world of product placement.
Sure
like,
is.
whatever you need in Hollywood, he is the guy. And so I went and met with him, and he wouldn't let us shoot the first meeting with him. And because I said, I just want to talk to you about this film. So I went in and met with him, and he's like, and he was so angry from the minute I walked in the room. And he basically said, who do you think you are? Let me tell you something, Spurlock. You are not going to supersize my business, buddy. You got me? That is not happening. I'm calling everybody in town. Nobody's going to work with you. Nobody's going to work with you on this film. This movie is dead. It is dead. And I was like, so that means you're not going to help us with the film? And he's like, dead. And so, sure enough.
He sounds like the woman in your focus group.
He sounds like same woman. The little known fact, Norm Marshall was the woman in that focus group.
That's what it sounded
Yeah,
like.
it's true. And so then it's true enough, he called around, and not one product placement company in LA would help us after Norm called everybody. And so I said, God, you know what? I said, we have to take our future into our own hands. We have to embrace our own destiny here and start cold calling all these people. So we started cold calling every brand, every company that you can think of. We started cold calling them all. And we called probably around 700 companies. Wow. More. I'd say probably 700, 750. And if you include all the product placement and ad agencies, it's almost 1,000 all in. But the average people who said yes versus the people who said no, for every 2 companies that said yes, 98 would say no. So we had a success rate of about 2 out of 100. Mm-hmm. We went to the Sundance Film Festival with 15 brands on board. 15 brands said yes, and there were tons of 98% of the brands said no. Like I called Abercrombie and Fitch, and the woman from Abercrombie said, do you want me to tell you why you're not Abercrombie material? to which I said, I was like, yes. She said, okay, fine. You're old. And I don't mean a little old, like you're getting really old. Like you're going bald. If you haven't noticed. And your skin, like that color, what is the color of your skin? It's almost translucent. And your body, I don't even want to know what's going on underneath your clothes. She says, and that thing on your face, a mustache? A mustache. We sell clothing, not pornography.
Nice.
And I said to her, listen, I've seen your ads. I beg to differ, And so she's like, we're not supporting this movie. So we had 15 brands that said yes when we went to Sundance. Movie premiered, great response, great press. 7 more brands signed on out of Sundance because now it's already a proven commodity. Old Navy, who originally said no, as I was leaving the premiere, the CMO Old Navy grabbed me by the arm and she said, we want in. We want in. Whatever it takes. You call me on Monday. We want in. And so we got Old Navy into the movie. And she also sounded much like Norm Marshall and the one in the test screening. So it's like all one. We realized that one person controls this whole business. And so, but out of that fact, I think that movie showed that we could take brands on board, take their money, make the movie that we still wanted to make, and do it in a way that they weren't offended by. I mean, I think that the beautiful thing about Greatest Movie Ever Sold is we got to completely tell our story. We were transparent from the beginning. We told them what the film was about. Nobody was surprised. Mm-hmm. We told them you don't get final approval of how your products are going to be in the film, and it takes a tremendous amount of confidence in your product. That was the biggest problem. Is the minute we would say to big brands, to the Cokes, the Pepsis of the world, say you don't have control over this, was when they all walked away.
Red flag.
Because the minute these brands don't have control, they don't want to be involved. Because ultimately they've spent so many years cultivating this perfect image of what this is. They don't want to give up any of that control. And for me, moving forward, the smartest thing brands can do is to be relinquish some of that control. Because I think it will put them in a much better position, in the future.
Do you feel like maybe you've influenced the show The Pitch?
I haven't seen it. I hear it's terrible, but I don't know.
But just
is it any good? Has anybody seen
anyone
it?
see the pitch?
No, it's terrible.
It's terrible?
It's terrible.
Okay.
There you go. Word on the street.
Well, it just feels
Right
like
there.
that show could never be in existence.
Word on the moat is it's terrible. Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. So I mean, I would like to see it. It's just one of those. It feels like such propaganda in a lot of ways. Like the movie or the show Undercover
Yes.
Boss
Yeah.
feels like such propaganda. Where it's like the CEO. Oh, now I'm finally gonna getting my hands dirty, and it's just like it feels like such corporate propaganda. I have a hard time watching that show.
I feel so bad for the guy on that show that's just being a real person. It's a shit job, and whatever you can do for your family, and he's just kind of bitching about his day to his boss.
To the CEO. Oh, and by the way, you're fired.
Whoa.
As soon as that camera turns off, you're out of here. Yeah.
All right, what else we got from out there? It's a great question. What else? Don't be shy. Yes, in the front.
You said that you're,
That's Hannah, by the way.
Yeah.
you said your company, how many people are in your company, and what's the collaborative nature?
There's like 7 people full time in my company, and we balloon and contract as we need to. Like right now, with the projects we have going on, there's probably about 43 people, I guess, working there. And it's an incredibly collaborative space. Anybody who has an idea, we're open to, and people who have ideas on things that we're shooting, that we're editing, whether they be cameramen or field producers. I truly believe that filmmaking is not a single individual that makes movies or TV shows. That it is a process of involving great minds to come in to make something even better. How do we market the greatest movie ever sold? As the greatest movie you'll ever see. The beautiful thing about that film, and this is what there've been some great things that have come out of that film. When that film came out, not only did we had Sony Pictures, kind of helping to promote that film in a traditional kind of film promotion angle, but we had 22 brand partners that suddenly were sending out emails, that were posting on their websites, that were creating co-promotions in a way that had never happened with documentaries before. Whether that be Sheets, the official, convenience store where you could get the greatest, drink you'll ever have, and the official collector cup of the movie, to, Mane and Tail, the official shampoo, a shampoo that is for both horses and people. That Mane and Tail, which, let us take over their website with promotion for the movie. There was such this incredible, I think, upsurge around that film. It was pretty incredible.
For each of those type of deals, did they just go ahead and do it, or did you have to refine them?
No, every single one of those was us. We hired an intermediary. One of my mentors was a guy named David Lax, who's a brilliant marketer, who basically came on and played liaison between us in the studio and all 22 of those brands. And so basically he would talk to them, we would come up with what the co-promotion would be, what made the most sense, because you wanted everything to hit at the same time. So you wanted to create, what we were calling like the Iron Man of documentaries, so that basically anywhere you went, you knew that the greatest movie ever sold was happening, that the film was coming out, that it was, in a theater near you. And so to have all those things kind of line up, whether it would be, you walked into a hotel and turned on your TV at a Hyatt, and I came walking on your screen, in a towel and a robe, or you're on JetBlue Airways, and like the plane takes off, and the first video you see is me welcoming you to JetBlue Airways, the greatest airline you'll ever fly. Like all those things hit around the opening of the movie, and so there was a tremendous amount of awareness around the movie. Corporate Super Size Me had one big corporate partner that was very unhappy they were a corporate partner. But the amazing thing, to look back at Super Size Me, which is amazing, is this is a film, if you think back, it was 8 years ago, which, it's hard for me to even believe it's 8 years. But, this is a film that came out pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-YouTube. There was, the kind of the on-demand digital iTunes revolution that's happened around movies. This is a movie that had such kind of tremendous word of mouth, just literally being fed by traditional media. There were internet stories, but nothing along the lines of the quick response that you're getting from stuff today, where it seems like all of that information is getting infinitely more disposable. There's a great line in the movie, in Greatest Movie Ever Sold. Ferris Jakob from Kirschenbaum and Bond talks about the cultural decay rate of ideas. And he says that, as we're talking to all 22 of our brand partners around kind of a brainstorm session, he says that in our society today, the cultural decay rate of ideas is 2 weeks. So from when something hits to when everybody's talking about it, there's a real 2-week window where you can capitalize on that attention, where you can kind of get the most out of the people before it really starts to just, bottom out. And for us, it was trying to, kind of use that as the window where we wanted to capitalize on getting the most people to know about the movie.
Right. So, a couple of personal questions. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in West Virginia. I was the youngest of 3 brothers, 3 ballet dancing brothers, which was so not the cool thing to be doing in West Virginia. And both my brothers went on to become professional dancers. I went on to become an amateur filmmaker. And it was an amazing place to grow up. My parents were amazing. They were really beautiful, supportive people. Both of them are still around. They were just really supportive of the arts. They loved movies. They loved music. My mom used to always write poetry and stories, and she was an English teacher. So before I would ever turn in papers to teachers in school, my mother would read them and then correct it with a red pen even before I turned it into my actual teacher, which I hated her for. But she ultimately, taught me the difference between who and whom, which is a good thing to know. So, I feel very lucky to have the parents I had. I tell you, there's 2 things that I really appreciate my parents for. My mother was someone who always believed that if you could make a difference, you should. If you could help someone, you had to. And so my mother, as I was growing up, was a collector of strays, and whether that be animals or individuals. I don't think there was a time when I was growing up that there wasn't some guest staying in our house. Wow. There was always somebody. It's mom's he's just going to stay here for a couple days. He just needs a place to sleep. So there was always someone in our house who was just kind of passing by. Wow.
Third, fourth cousin, or
no, not even relatives. Just somebody who she
guy.
worked with at school, somebody who split up with their wife, or is having a hard time, or whatever it may be. Somebody was always having a hard time and always staying at our house. And it was amazing. She was just one of those people who was incredibly involved in helping people, not only within her kind of direct circle of influence, but in our community. And my father, who is this entrepreneur who started a business out of our garage and kind of grew it. He started a torque wrench repair center, torque wrenches they use in coal mines and in factories. And he turned it into the largest torque wrench repair center in the United States. And the whole time as he was building that company, he would start other companies, and then this other company would completely fail and flame out, or this other one would do okay, and he'd sell it off to somebody else. And I would see my father succeed and fail constantly, but I would never see him quit. And so to kind of grow up in a house where it was about being persistent and tenacious and knowing that failure came with the path was kind of, I feel very fortunate for that.
You never truly win if you don't fail, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So when did you say, okay, he's going to do the ballet thing, and I'm a filmmaker? When did that happen?
I always loved movies, and we would always go as families to see films, and I loved movies. I remember seeing, as a kid. My parents took me to see stuff you should never take kids to see.
Yeah,
but it was the 70s. It's we didn't have seat belts. It didn't matter. My parents, they smoked everywhere. My mother and father, who both smoked, and we me and my 3 brothers, 3 of us would be in the back seat, and they'd be chain smoking in the front seat of the car, and we'd be like, "Can you roll down the window?" And it'd be like. And they'd roll the window down just like that 1/4 inch that they'd roll it in the middle of winter, so they'd keep smoking, and then they go, and they'd blow it at that little path as the waft of smoke would just come into the back seat, and we just smelled like little drunkards getting out of the car at age 11. But they were just amazing people, and. But they took us to see I saw Jaws in a movie theater at age 7 or 6. You should never take a kid to see Jaws. He's that old, and they're like, it's just a beach movie. It's fine. It's and terrible shit would start happening in films. It's only a movie. Don't worry. This is all make believe. I saw The Exorcist. They took me to The Exorcist.
Wow.
The first time it came out was 73, 74. They didn't take me then, but there was a re-release not long after Jaws, which was around 77, 78, that they did take me to. So here I am, this 7-8-year-old kid, in a movie watching The Exorcist, and and it's fuck me, and it's in the middle. It's I was 7 years old. It's the most disturbing thing you could see, and my parents oh, it's only a film, don't worry about it. And it's just they were special, and but from that, but I loved And I blame them for, kind of me loving horror films. Like, I love gory movies. When Michael Ironside made that guy's head explode in Scanners, kind of changed my life forever. Like, that was the moment when that happened, and I saw that in a movie theater. I said, I want to do that, whatever that is. Like, I want to make movies. And so I started learning how to do like my own makeup special effects at 14, 15. Being able to like make giant scars and blood and eyeballs popping out of my head. There's nothing more rewarding than running into your kitchen with a giant gash in your arm, screaming, and your mom's like, "Oh my God!" And you're like, "No, it's okay, it's fake." Until
That's
you're actually
for The Exorcist.
yeah, until you're like really hurt, and then you're like, "No, I really need to go to the hospital," and they don't believe you. But no, and then I went and had that meeting. You have that meeting with your guidance counselor, and this was pre-worldwide interweb, so you couldn't just go online and say, "Well, here's where you should go to college." So you go to have that meeting with your guidance counselor when you're in your junior year, and they say, "What do you want to do with your life?" And they get down the giant book of what you should do with your life, that has like every college in the United States. It's like this thick, and you say, and I said, "Well, I really, what do you like? What do you enjoy doing?" And I was like, "Well, I love movies. Like, I love how to make films." And so it's like, when they blow it open to that page, it's like the Sorting Hat, and so they flip it open to like making movies, and like sure enough, they said, "Well, you could go to college for that," and they started telling me like colleges I could go to, and who knew you could actually go to college and learn how to make films. And this was whatever it was, 1988, and that was it. I was like, I want to go to college to make movies.
What's your favorite movie?
My favorite scripted film of all time is a movie by Ilya Kazan called A Face in the Crowd, which is, if you haven't seen, you should, being folks who work in the media. It's this incredible commentary. It came out, around like 1960, and it stars Andy Griffith as this character called Lonesome Rhodes, who basically he starts off as this radio star who then becomes the biggest star of television. And Ilya Kazan, talked about the power of television being too powerful, like saying this was something we need to like realize and reel in the power of influence that this little box has. And it's a story about this man who suddenly becomes the most influential person in America, and how not only does that kind of corrupt society, but how it also corrupts the individual. And even today, like, it's a movie that I can start watching. If it comes on, it's like Shawshank Redemption. The minute it starts playing, I'm glued to the couch for 2 hours. I can't get up. But it is such a beautiful movie, 60 years later, that is still just the most honest look at kind of media that you'll ever see.
All right.
Yeah.
And unless there's one
that guy's
more.
got a question right
Okay,
there.
good.
How did the NASCAR style suit come about? When did you retire it? And
Yeah.
where is it now?
We have the NASCAR style suit came from there's two pieces to this story, where the first one came from for years. Whenever I would go do promotion for television, or for films or TV shows or whatever, I would go on TV and I just wear like jeans and a button down. This is like at the very beginning, like when Super Size Me came out, and I would get calls from my mother the minute the show would air at like midnight, 11:45, whatever time it would air, and she'd be like, I'd say, "Hey, did you watch?" And she said, "Yeah, I watched. Why didn't you wear a suit? Why didn't you look really handsome in a suit. You should wear a suit." She goes, "If you're going to go on TV like that, I mean, it's important. You've got to look nice." And so she would literally chastise me. What didn't matter, that I was like, there on a show that like she and I grew up watching and loved. She's like, you should have worn a suit. So buried in the back of my head was I need to have a suit whenever I go do promotion. And the original idea when we started making the film was I would make like a literal NASCAR suit. Like I would make like one of those kind of flame retardant jumpsuits. But then I just imagined the phone call that I would get from my mom if I was wearing a flame retardant jumpsuit of her saying, "Why would you wear that jumpsuit? Like, why would you not wear a suit?" So in my mind I said, what I will do is I will take that suit and I will turn a regular suit into kind of my NASCAR sponsored suit. And we started off with just the black version, and then we made a blue one and a gray one, and we've got them. They're all retired. They're all back at our office, and there are a couple places that are going to be having some charity auctions that we've already offered them up. That we're going to be selling them off for charity in the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I wanted to ask you was, is it in your plans to make a, fully scripted blockbuster Hollywood movie?
Yeah. No. Blockbuster. That's. Knock on wood, that's out of my hands. But but to make a narrative film, I would love to make a scripted movie. It's something I've always wanted to do. There's a narrative film that we've been working on now for about 3 years.
Great.
That We're now in the home stretch of casting, the home stretch of the financing is done. Now it's just, scheduling based upon the cast that we're trying to get into the film. So, hopefully that'll happen this summer.
Any clues? Overarching, macro level subject?
It's very kind of it's the film that I thought was the perfect film for me to make. It's very Aaron Brockovich-ish, insider-ish, little guy fighting against the big guy.
I like that.
It's based on a true story, so I think I think people will dig it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure I speak for everyone in here that we're all looking forward to that. And I want to thank everybody here for sticking it out. And we hope you come back tomorrow. And everybody, please help me give a warm round of applause to a very good sport, Mr. Morgan Spurlock.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.